There we are.
Hello, everybody in the Purse Strings for Financially Fearless Women group. How's everyone doing today? We have Liz Yoder on today. So hello, Liz.
Yeah, welcome, Liz.
Glad
to have you. Yeah. So this is our Facebook Live that we do every Thursday at noon Central Time, because I am in Chicago. So, and this is just a great time for people to take pause and maybe grab something to eat and sit back and learn a little something about financials, different financial tips and concerns. Good morning, California. And today we have such an important topic, Liz. The unique service that you and your company provides is one that I don't think many people have heard of. And that's why I think it's really important to really explain. And I know you said there's a percentage of families that have family members with, and I'm going to screw up the word. What is the technical name for it?
So there's no technical name. Well, there is a technical name. Neurodiversity is the word that we use.
Okay, great. Hi, Chicago. Neurodiversity. Yeah. And so we're eager to hear about the impact to families and the importance of really providing financial oversight in these situations. And so glad that you're here, Liz.
Great. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's great topic.
Yeah. We love everyone jumping in to let us know where you're coming from today and how the day is going. We're so excited everyone's here. We got Mary Beth and we got Adrian here. So I see a couple more popping in, so that's great.
Yeah.
So yeah, Liz, what you do, when we found your practice, or not, you don't own the practice, but you work for Planning Across the Spectrum. And so it was a niche that we didn't know anyone really worked on. I mean, people have the niche of financial planning for women or financial planning for, over 50 or different things, but not many people have financial planning for IDD.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So yeah, there aren't that many people who do what we do, who have a passion and an understanding for the community. And it's not just IDD, it's any kind of neurodiversity or disability. We get into the nitty-gritty of what benefits are available to people and how to create the most supportive and meaningful life for those individuals, and to support the families in making the right decisions for the whole household and for the future of their child's needs, whether that's something that they need to plan for or not. Oftentimes it is, especially with the folks with IDD, which is intellectual and developmental disability. But a lot of the time, a lot of people with neurodiversity who don't have IDD are really more like among us.
Yeah,
and can work and can have families and lives that are meaningful. And it's important for us to recognize that there are some things holding them back from living in the world fully as adults. Part of that is the fear of losing benefits if they ever had them. And the other is just people not understanding what supports should be given to really a lot of us. A lot of us we just need a little bit extra support. And I want to be cognizant too of my language. I am not someone who has a diagnosis. About half of my team members do. And we always have a fine balancing act of acknowledging the abilities and the resources that people with neurodiversity have, but also recognizing that there is a disability there, that there is something, that there is a challenge that is diagnosed and can be supported. And it's important to acknowledge that and to not just wave it away or to say, oh, but they're okay in this area and that area and that. We do want to acknowledge that this is a full person with challenges and with skill sets, and that that's different than me having my challenges and my skill sets, but it's just a continuum of diversity that we all have as a team.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Wonderful.
Definitely. Well,
should we jump in?
Yeah, let me give a little intro to Liz, and then I'll give you the floor. So Liz found the path to financial planning while attending national disability conferences held in DC area while she was a live-in caregiver and a member of La Arche Home. Each conference, parents and siblings had questions of how to keep lifeline benefits intact. At each conference, she met a few people who did not have a family member with diagnosis. She grew frustrated that not enough people were doing this work to educate families and lift earning potential for ready-to-work people who receive government benefits. So Liz has more recently joined Planning Across the Spectrum in February 2021, so jumping into feet first. And so, Liz, please, I'll give you the floor.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share. The biggest thing I want to say right now about what I'll be going through is that this will be a very, very high level overview of the things that families have to consider when there's some kind of diagnosis in their family. And there are so many things that would determine what is right for you and your family and your loved one who has a disability. And I can't speak to those kind of individual questions necessarily without understanding more about your personal situation and your family's personal situation. So I'm just trying to make sure that this addresses the broadest audience possible. So I'll get into some of my slides and just start from there. All right. So the first thing I want to go through is really seek support. Bottom line, just make sure that if you have a disability or a diagnosis, the first thing you really need to do is seek support. And I have up here a slide about the disability team and what all the people that you could be utilizing when you're looking for answers. There's professionals here, there's family, there's friends, there's the school, and there's many people who are around you in your life who won't ever understand exactly what you're going through or what your child or loved one is going through when they get a diagnosis or when an accident or something happens where they find themselves in a disability. But it's important, so important, that you get emotional support and guidance in what you need and what your child or loved one needs. Now, having said that, a friend or a family member can support you emotionally, but they'll have ideas on what's right for you and not the skill set to know exactly what's right for you. It's truly important to know what to listen to feedback from friends and family, knowing that they might have a different experience than you. For example, if you're chatting with a friend who is in school with your child, they're in the same classes, they have the same disability diagnosis, they will experience life very differently than your child, and their family will experience life very differently from your family. Just because they think it's the right thing to find a new school for their child who's struggling, maybe that's not the right thing for your family, and that there might be the right supports in the school that you're attending, or it might be a different situation that you're looking at. Know that the stories and the support that people are giving you are all in the right heart. They're coming from the right place. But the best support that you can get is one that looks at your individual experience and can address real specifics in what your next steps are. When it comes to financial advice, we all have ideas and kind of stories that we've heard that make us think that we're doing the right thing sometimes when maybe that's not the case. So we truly, truly, truly wish that every family seeks advice and support from professionals to address the actual needs of your family, and that you are listened to, and that you feel like you are following the path that your family needs to walk. So this next slide is going through really the planning timeline of a diagnosis. Oftentimes, someone that is diagnosed with a neurodiversity in childhood. That's not always the case. Andrew, who's autistic, my team member, has and the owner of Planning Across the Spectrum, was not diagnosed until he was in adulthood, and it gave him a whole new perspective on what his life was as a child and what his life could be as an adult. And the diagnosis really shakes up people's identities and what they see as their future potential. Sometimes that's for the better, and sometimes the diagnosis can be really a struggle to piece together what is the next thing. One of the things that I've seen sometimes with families is that a diagnosis then becomes a crutch, and a reason to say, oh, my child won't be doing this because of their diagnosis. Be very aware that that might not always be the case. That with support and with if there's an intent to do whatever that is, like play a sport, for example, or be on a team or drive, if there's an intent to learn that skill and there's supports to do it, and it can be done in a safe way, there's no reason why that child shouldn't pursue that interest. The second big thing I want to talk about is to know what you're entitled to and to seek it out. So families with disabilities have to learn about government benefits in a way that the average American just simply will not need to learn about the programs of the government that support people with disabilities. Depending on when the diagnosis occurs, a child might be entitled or be granted a benefit, right, or well, be entitled to a benefit, but might not receive that benefit until it's applied for. A lot of the times, like for example, an IEP or an individual education plan is a plan put in place to support a child's learning and occupational growth as a student, and then later prepping them to graduate from high school and enter some kind of meaningful occupation. So the IEP and the school system will provide support once a diagnosis is received in the school system. Now, if a child, there are all kinds of other programs that a child could be the beneficiary of outside of the school system. The school system is hugely important and probably one of the most leaned on resources and utilized resources that a child could have while going through school. But there are also other governmental, federal programs and state programs that could support a child through school and in adulthood. I'm going to touch again high level on some of these programs just to give you a little bit of a sense of what they could be. And the first one is SSI, or Supplemental Security Income. So this is one of the Social Security income programs that it was developed partially to support people with disability. And there are strict guidelines on people's income and asset levels that exclude a lot of people from even being eligible for the benefits, especially in childhood. So because the parents' assets and earnings are included in the calculation for the benefit of SSI. So oftentimes a child is not eligible until they're 18, but at their 18th birthday, they're eligible to apply for SSI. And then they can have that income stream start. The big benefit of being on SSI, besides the income and support that provides to the individual and the family, is that they are also then eligible for Medicaid. And Medicaid as a child or a young adult also is a stepping stone for some other really important programs called Medicaid Waiver support programs. Medicaid waiver programs are probably the most sought after and important programs that a child or adult could have outside of the school system, because they offer real support for case management, for community, being able to access things in the community, transportation, additional medical supports, whether they be adaptive equipment or therapies or just in-home care, education for your family to do in-home care themselves. A vast array of supports can be available from the Medicaid waiver programs. Not all Medicaid waiver programs are require an individual to have that asset limit of, and it's just under just $2,000 of assets in an individual's name. So there are programs for children who don't have that, who don't qualify otherwise for Social Security, the supplemental income piece of Social Security. So it's really important to know your state and what's offered through your state's Medicaid programs. Each Medicaid program, again, the Medicaid system is kind of run by, or legally bound in the federal government, and then run by each individual state. And each individual state has different rules and services that they can offer through the Medicaid programs. Medicaid itself is that medical piece of the puzzle, so the actual medical care, and then the waiver programs are programs that the state kind of waives the required kind of it's hard to define it. The waiver is waiving what is required of the basic Medicaid program. So there's a lot there. We always want someone, if they're medically fragile, if they have long-term needs and have a hard time seeing themselves working for a meaningful career or life, there are a lot of opportunities in the Medicaid waiver programs to really support those individuals and make sure that they're getting what they need, particularly in housing support for adults. One thing that I'll say here too, the legislation that just passed includes additional support for some of those Medicaid waiver programs. And I'm looking forward to reading what exactly that means for my state. But many of these Medicaid waivers that are offered to children and adults have limited resources funding them. So there are often waiting lists associated with the supports that people need. That waiting list could be anywhere between 10 to 100 years. And the waiting list only, your position in the waiting list changes when new funding comes to the state waiver programs, when you have a crisis and you move up the list of priorities in the list itself, or someone no longer qualifies or passes away. It's truly very important to know what the waivers are in your state and what you're eligible for, and to apply for them as early as physically possible, so that when you as a parent are looking at, okay, my son needs to live with me forever, well, they can't do that. They can live with you as long as you're living. And then if they're not on the waiting list to receive housing support, it would be really challenging for them to find a spot in a home that's available through the waiver program in a crisis, regardless of that bumping them up the list. It's much easier to work through one of those heart-challenging ideas of finding a new home for your son or daughter when that's not a crisis situation, and you can really work through that transition with them. So I spoke about SSI, that's the income, the supplemental security income. That qualifies people for Medicaid oftentimes. There's also an additional program of Social Security, SSDI, which is Social Security Disability Income, which has a different qualification and oftentimes replaces SSI when an individual qualifies for SSDI when they pay into the Social Security system, so they are working and they earn enough credits and they're disabled and they can then receive SSDI. Their parent becomes disabled or retires or dies. And that is when SSDI would take over and switch the SSI income. SSI income is really the last resort the government gives to people to kind of keep them out of poverty. And SSDI is more that what people kind of think about as retirement Social Security checks. Well, this is just the beneficiary is either disabled or receiving adult child credit for for their parents' work record. Once someone receives SSDI, they then are eligible to receive Medicare, and that would replace or be held at the same time with Medicaid. And so that opens up the door for providers that someone would be eligible to use. So that's a lot on benefits that I did not go very deep into. We have, as a professional, we could spend a day or two going over each individual program and still have time to research them and understand all the intricacies. But I just want you to be aware that you really have resources available to you, that you should apply for what you're eligible for, and that you should really apply early and often for the programs that you might need in the future, but don't necessarily need now. I'll move on to the next idea, but that I'll go back to this one. We want you to be able to not do all the research yourself, but get the support you need. There are professionals who know Social Security and benefits, even the Social Security office. Don't be afraid to use them. They have huge books on what qualifies as income, what benefits are available, and they can support you in understanding what you're eligible for and how to get you what you need. I'll go back just for a second. The third piece I want to go over a little bit is you should really seek to have flexibility in your planning. And this is really in reference to estate planning, but in any planning, I'll go to this picture here. So Karen's grandma is here, and she has money, and she leaves it to Daniel in a third-party special needs or supplemental needs trust. Daniel's the beneficiary, and he'll get some resources from this third-party trust when he needs it, and the trustee determines that he needs the money. Karen, who is Daniel's mother, it has been managing the trust for him. And when Karen passes away, there's more funding that goes into the third-party special needs trust. So in this, that's kind of just a picture of one thing that can happen in a trust planning situation. Now here, a third-party special needs trust is managed by a trustee. And in this case, the trust will pay for Daniel's needs, and it will also pay into an ABLE account, which is it's a savings account that Daniel can use independently with a representative payee without needing to go through a trustee. So he can kind of be more self-directive in that regard using the ABLE account. What I wanted to talk about was flexibility and planning. So this special needs trust is a living document that says what Daniel will be eligible to use money for. And it's designed to really protect him from oftentimes losing the benefits that he's eligible for, and to protect him from creditors and being taken advantage of, and sometimes to protect him from himself, so that he doesn't spend all his resources in a way that's unwise or that doesn't take into his long-term planning. A lot of the times, special needs trust can be set up for people who have impulse control challenges, and having an additional trustee might be helpful to them. The thing that I wanted to say about flexibility and planning is that sometimes we can, as we're drafting estate documents and trusts, assume that that Daniel will need to be on benefits for the rest of his life. Here in this picture, Daniel looks like he's probably about 7. We just don't know what this 7-year-old will be capable of. And that's just really important to think about and to review when you're drafting your documents, is that we can make some assumptions about what the need will be in the future. But for a lot of people, when we're drafting documents, we can be more restrictive than we need to be, and really put someone in jeopardy, unintended jeopardy for what we've written in our documents. And I'll give you an example. If you in your documents write that you should not take any funds out of the accounts within the trust that will jeopardize Daniel's benefits. And Daniel is now 35 and homeless. He got kicked out of his apartment he was renting, and he does not have a next step. He could qualify for like HUD benefits. He could qualify for really anything, but if the trust had the ability to purchase a home and hold that for Daniel in the trust and kind of lose some of those benefits that he might be eligible for, that would kind of be okay because he would be safe. There's a lot of things that you can put in a trust that would really restrict his ability to move in the world as an adult, and we want him to be able to control as much as possible too. That's one of the reasons why we would advocate, if he is on benefits, to utilize an ABLE account, because he has more control over an ABLE account than he does over a trust, and can make those decisions to support himself, or not support himself, to really pursue hobbies or interests that the restrictions of a trust might not be open to. There's a lot of conversation in the neurodiversity world about making sure that people have as much power and control over their own planning as possible. And we at Planning Across the Spectrum really advocate for the person's ability to make their own decisions and to be included in their own planning, particularly when it comes to just being told what they have, being told. Some people who have an intellectual disability might not understand the concept of money and how it gets spent or what it's used for and how it grows and or how to keep it safe. But it's important for them to know that they are financially secure if that's the case, so that when it is time to ask for money to a trustee, that they know that they have resources and that they can not feel bad about asking for them, that they can really have empowerment and ask to do the things that they want to do. If they want to go horseback riding every month and don't know what they have in savings, they might not ask to do that. And they might not have an advocate who really knows that that's what's going on with them. So that's kind of 2 in 1. Be flexible in the planning, allow those kinds of purchases within the trust document, but also be as upfront and open to allow the person to support themselves and to understand what they have access to so that they can really help direct their own life. More I'll say about that is the guardianship conversation comes up a lot when it comes to children who are no longer children. So when we're talking about setting up guardianship in a will, for example, we always recommend that a minor receives a guardian. But when someone's older than 17, really, we want to ask these questions of, can the child really make decisions or without support? We have seen in some of our personal history, not my personal history, but certainly Andrew's, where decisions were made for him when he could make decisions for himself. And it's important to understand that just because someone has a disability, a neurodiversity, or a depression diagnosis, anything like that, just because they have a disability does not mean that they can't be involved in making decisions for themselves. So really consult with an attorney when someone cannot make decisions without support. But if they can, consider all other options other than guardianship for an adult child. Guardianship is again very restrictive. It's a court process that requires a lot of time and energy and is demeaning to the adult who is an adult. If they don't need guardianship or conservatorship, it's important to recognize that maybe there are other options. One option is supported decision making, and excuse me, that is really not in every state is there a supportive decision making process that's kind of set in stone and legal at this point, but kind of think of it as someone can elect, as a person with a disability, someone can elect someone to help them make decisions. And it's not someone who's appointed for them, it's someone that they trust and recognize as being a support in their life. And they can really be the ones that say, I agree with this person and I want what they say is right for me. That's just one example of how that could work. What we don't want is capable adults being having their rights to make decisions for themselves taken away. Now, I don't know how much more time I have, but I really have one final thing to say, and that is advocate, 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 but and recognize that while you, as a parent or sibling or loved one, may be the loudest or longest voice in your loved one's life, you will not be the only one who, and should not be the only one who is advocating for the rights of your child or loved one. There are so many people, if you allow them to come into your life, who can support you and your child, sometimes and often independently of a relationship with you, who can really point your loved one in a direction of exploring the world in a way that they can learn something new and grow from and be fully engaged that you would never have thought that they would be capable of doing. When we allow other people into the lives of the people we protect so fiercely, we can learn more about that, our loved one. And it's just so important to listen to your family member, your loved one who has a disability, to know what they need, but also allow other people to share what they know and what they believe as well. The advocacy world is so interesting and different. We all are learning as time goes by to change our language, to change the way we think about things. And for example, there's a debate right now in the neurodiversity world of, I wish I had pulled this graphic, of whether or not to use identity or person first language. Identity language is saying something like, I am autistic. That is my identity. Person first language is, I'm a person with autism. I'm not defined by autism. It's just a part of who it's just something I carry. Many people will will identify either way. One way very strongly, or one way very strongly the other way. And it's important in our world to understand that we just need to learn from each other and need to ask what their preferred way of being seen is. And it's the advocacy world that kind of introduces us to those different ways of thinking, different ways of interacting with the world, different language we can use to support each other. And that's really how I got involved, is just listening to families, listening to individuals, and understanding what is their perspective on the world, and how can we amplify their voices, because they're asking so loudly for what they need, and their voices need to be amplified. So that's why I'm doing this work, and I hope this was helpful to some of you. I know that there are probably hundreds of questions and that I did not address nearly enough of what I could have. But I just wanted to kind of introduce some of those ideas and hopefully they were helpful.
It was some really empowering information. So thank you so much, Liz. I mean, you really helped everyone in the conversation get a voice, which is really great. We do have one question down here. It says, can the ABLE account be funded directly by the beneficiary if they earn a small income? Also, can the S&T fund paying premiums for parents policy that combines long-term care and life insurance?
Okay, so the ABLE account being funded directly by the beneficiary is something that some states allow. Some programs will allow that. And it really depends on the program that the beneficiary is enrolled in. And some cases, the state will even kind of do a match. There are some really cool things that are being explored with that, so that the ABLE looks a little bit more like a employed 401k program that I think more states could explore. But yes, some states will allow that, not all. So that's a particular question. The special needs trust, once it's funded, is really for the beneficiary's use. So unless the beneficiary owns the insurance policy, which I don't see that as being ideal, the premium should really come from the account owner, from the life insurance owner, and not the special needs trust. There's certainly sensitivity around funding the special needs trust during the lifetime of the parents for some of those reasons, where it becomes kind of like, well, I need to pay for life in retirement and not have it sitting in this trust for a future use. But that's definitely a sensitivity. I don't believe that would be recommended, that the special needs trust pay for the insurance premiums. Even if the beneficiary were to receive, even if the trust were to receive the policy. That's something I'm not clear on, but
okay, because
to explore.
Said, the graphic showed the trust, the S&T paying the life insurance premium. So is that okay?
So no, that let me show that again, if I can get it up. It was really showing the life insurance was funding the trust. Let's see if I can share that again. So pays and premiums. I see where you see that. I'm not clear on that, to be honest. I can get back to you if you. I can post that later in the conversation.
Awesome. And then we just have one more question for you today. And that would be, when do families start working with you at Planning Across the Spectrum? Do people, when their child or loved one is very young, or is this something they do when their child or loved one gets older? What's kind of the process there?
So that's the answer to that is yes. Whenever you are interested in learning about your own financial life, and we really talk to anyone, whether the question is as simple as, what does my state offer? And and other ideas. So if we were to do a plan for a family, we would do one for anyone, including the person with the disability, so that we prefer to talk to them as well about their own interests and planning interests. So yes, we work with people just diagnosed who are 3 years old, and you're just kind of looking at what you should be doing for your own career path as a parent, and finding the resources in this education program. There are other advocates who work in that as well, and we can certainly connect people to the resources of their local area. But yes, we also work with the people in transition. We have some team members who are really only work with the children in transition, the 18 to 21-year-olds going between or looking for work. So we would work with everybody. So so we would do the financial planning and investment support for whoever's making and having money, and then additional support for the family looking for care support and resource management, really.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you so much, Liz. I mean, this was great information. And we always have these videos recorded under the guide section and on YouTube. So if anyone feels like somebody else needs to watch this as a great resource, there's always access to it as well. So we really appreciate you coming on today and giving us this great education, and really opening our eyes to different things that we need to be aware of and really look into. So we really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Liz. The information was really, really important, and learned a lot in this short time frame. So we know everyone knows how to get a hold of you, Liz, at planningacrossthespectrum.com. And they can also find access to Andrew's company on our First Strings page as well. So appreciate your time, and thank you.
Thank you.
And then next week we'll be here at the same time talking about 401ks and kind of dissecting who, what, when, where, why, how on those.
Yeah, important.
All right, so see everyone next week. Thank you. Thank you, Liz.
Bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Liz.
you.